So you might be heading in a direction, but it's basically like just a note to check. Is this what you truly want? Does it feel aligned? Does it feel good? Are you passionate about it? And you don't have to have all the answers. You're going to keep evolving throughout your career and want to make different impacts. But being clear on the purpose, where you're going, because that will impact your strategy, which will give you direction, which will give you clarity, and will help you make decisions about what makes sense. And then the authenticity piece.
Hello, and welcome to Her Way, the podcast where we support women in their authentic leadership. Today, I'm joined by Julianna Walsh, who's the founder of Lead Herself, and frankly, the perfect person to be featuring on our podcast. She is an expert in women's leadership, having done a PhD in that area. So I'm really delighted to welcome you today.
Thank you. I've really been looking forward to this. I'm like genuinely excited, and I feel like very aligned on a lot of the topics I think we're going to get into. So hopefully we can cover everything.
Wonderful. Oh, I love to hear that. Well, we are always in flow at Her Way. This is how we choose to do things, the feminine way. So we just trust the flow. And I love that it brought me to you and brought you here. So generally, I like to, rather than go into kind of formal introductions and life histories, just to plunge straight in.
Okay.
And start with your journey with women's leadership. So I'm really curious about what planted the seed for you. You know, why do you care enough to do years of study? Yeah, right. That's a passion. So I'd love to understand that.
Yeah, and I feel like journey is a good word, seed is a good word, and I feel like no matter how much reflection I do, I'm not sure exactly where it started specifically. I did my master's and PhD in something called industrial organizational psychology, which not a lot of people know what it is, and especially in the UK, because it's not really called that here. It might be like organizational psychology or occupational psychology, business psychology. It's basically the science of the workplace. So we do anything that I specialized in leadership as kind of a general topic, but you can look at how to motivate employees, employee engagement, well-being. You can also do performance management and hiring systems. So there's quite a broad area. I went into leadership and then found myself focusing on, I'm going to use air quotes probably a lot in this, but the softer side of leadership.
Let me just intervene and say, we don't need air quotes here. We do not need to make excuses for softer leadership. Ooh. No.
No excuses here.
No.
But so I think for me it's and I will probably get into this at some point, the coding that we have in our language that has been kind of a conditioning under the surface for a very long time that brings like I want to be clear when I say softer side. I don't mean less important. I don't mean weaker. I don't mean any of these other things that, a lot of people might have a connotation, even subconsciously. So I focused on this softer side, which got me into studying emotions in the workplace, employees' emotions, and how leaders might impact those emotions, which very naturally brought me into gender and leadership and differences in how women were perceived versus men for engaging in more empathetic, compassionate leadership behaviors and how that impacted how they were seen as leaders. Are they effective leaders or not? And I looked at that across cultures, so looking at what setting you were in and how that impacted those perceptions. So it was a whirlwind and very fascinating stuff. And then I went out into the world and got a real job. And the journey shifted a little bit. I was in leadership consulting for a while, and then I've had a little bit of a squiggly career. I ended up working in tech and then started working for myself a couple of years ago and I have all sorts of identity issues, but I guess a female tech founder is just not really how I define myself. Still working on my definition. But
well, if I may make another intervention, I would say that The further I've gone along this journey, the less I really identify as anything.
Oh, I know,
Right?
That's a rabbit hole.
So it's definitely a rabbit hole. But I think I almost feel an obligation every time something like this comes up to just assert, for the sake of our audience, and the women that we're speaking to, that we don't need to put ourselves in those boxes.
Yeah.
Right?
Boxes are a big part of the problem.
So if you just want to be a female tech magician, as opposed to
I don't know who I am, but I am the founder of Leader Self. That is for sure. That's written somewhere, and it's on a business card, I think.
Yes.
So Leader Self is an app that supports women at many stages in their career. I tend to focus on women early in their career because this is where I struggled with building these skills that impact how you show up in the workplace. So building confidence in your professional identity and clarity in your career and influence in the workplace for women specifically, because it's a lot to navigate out there, and it can lead to burnout, and it can be exhausting when things don't work out as you think they're going to. So my journey was a little bit zigzaggy, but I've ended up in a place that feels very aligned for me. So a lot of what I talk about is finding that alignment in what you want to do and how to get there, and those steps, which I think we're going to get into a bit. But long story short, that is my journey in women's leadership.
Oh, wonderful. Well, thank you for making the journey.
Yeah.
I think that's also very important to acknowledge for each of us. The journey isn't easy, always. And I think part of the message that Her Ways is also keen to get across is about persistence. So I'm always very interested with our guests in those pivotal moments where it felt like it would be so easy to give up.
Ooh.
And if anything comes to mind immediately, then I would love to hear that story as well.
I think when you said persistence, for me, I kind of reframed it in my head right away to resilience, because it's something women have in spades, but we're up against a lot from all sorts of angles in our life, but particularly in your career, it's a long game. And for me, in the beginning, I kind of alluded to struggling with things. I struggled with confidence. I struggled with self-doubt and how to show up and have a voice and get my ideas out there and be visible and get credit for things that I'd done and done well. So there was a point early on in my career where I was struggling not only with those things, but it was impacting my mental health. So very anxious at work. But it led to a lot of self-blame and thinking I was the problem and I was doing it wrong. And it was exhausting. So I did make a change. I left a job to do something completely different. But looking back, and this is part of why I've, if we could jump forward for a second, built Leader Self the way that I did, is that if I'd known more information, and this is coming from somebody with a PhD who studied this topic. This was after I graduated with that. So I knew all sorts about gender role congruity and all these other theories out there and all these expectations on women. But it's different when it's personal and it's under the surface and it's subtle and you don't see overtly how systems might be impacting how you feel inside. So if I'd known, it's women are interrupted 2 times more than men, even by other women in meetings and things like that. So something I really struggled with was speaking up in meetings. And if I'd just known stuff like that, because I'd tried all sorts of different techniques to speak up and make sure I was being clear in my communication and having the impact I wanted to have, it just takes a bit of the pressure off and takes a little bit of that blame that you have. So I had to do a lot of work there, and that was probably one pivotal moment, but it was more like a phase. And then another role I was in, I can't tell you how many times I've been told to be more confident in my career. I know that's something a lot of women experience, and it's like, but how? Like,
right.
just flip
Well,
a switch or
absolutely. It's interesting because I can relate so much to even the example you gave. I remember early in my career being told, "Oh, well, we know you're really smart. You don't speak enough at meetings. Please speak more at meetings. I'm sure you have good things to say." And I was just paralyzed. I didn't know.
Yeah. Like you're nailing it in your job, but you're not getting the visibility that you
Mm,
deserve. And, a lot of managers, it's not because there's any, ill intentions anywhere. A lot of people are, want to support you, but don't really know exactly how. There's not a lot of stuff out there on how to do that, how to help somebody build confidence. So I was told to be more confident by so many different people, absolutely nailing it in the job aside from these issues, which would keep me in place. And, they don't help promotability and salary negotiations and things like that. So I did a lot of work, years of work of trying different actions, experimenting, growing, getting uncomfortable because I wanted so badly to have the impact that I wanted. And then I was told I was too difficult. It was difficult to manage. So what I do now is help women navigate that. It's like in my head, it's this matrix of red lasers going everywhere, and you've got to help, duck and dip around different challenges that are coming your way because it's not easy and there's not a lot of guidance out there. So,
certainly.
how do you be more confident? How do you be strong? How do you have impact? How do you be a leader?
Yes.
But make sure it's effective and you're getting where you need to go and it's sustainable and you're not burning out and it's aligned with what you want to do.
That sounds like the dream.
That's it. That's the goal. That's
Yeah.
the entire mission.
Well, I'm very appreciative that that's the mission that you're on. And really, that's why you're here. I would love for you to share with us a little bit of that formula. I'm sure there's yeah. Yeah.
So where to start? I want to make sure this stays positive because it's very easy to slip into like, oh, this is what bias is and these are all the negative things that we're up against. And I call it like moving beyond bias, blame, and other barriers that we face to solutions.
Yes.
Like, okay,
Yes.
here's the situation I'm in. What do I do?
I
Not
really,
like, what do I do over the next 10 years? Like, what do I do today?
I fully support that. That's really the perspective that I've also come to, and that I would like her way to represent for women is how do we move forward?
Yeah. Like
Yeah.
what her way
Yeah.
forward is.
Yes,
Like,
exactly.
what do we do
Exactly.
now? What's the
And lead herself is also says that, right? It's putting the responsibility on us. And actually, that's correct. We do have that responsibility. If we don't take it, if we put ourselves in the position of a victim, then we're saying, I don't have agency. I can't do anything about this.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I completely agree. And I think of leader self a lot as self-leadership. So taking ownership over your career and what you want to achieve. And I want to, just in case anybody who's listening has a little bit of that nugget coming up in the back of their mind, but like, it's not on us. Like we're not the problem. Like it's that everything else should change. And I always say like, it's a tightrope to walk. We are not to blame, but it doesn't mean that we want to sit around and wait for everything else to be fixed, especially if you've got big dreams. And there's a lot that you want to do. So yes, I say agency is absolutely key. And there's a lot of other amazing work being done out there to support women in their careers from other angles, but I specifically focus on the individual and what they can change and what they can do to be more effective. So how do you do that? To me, it starts with authenticity and purpose. So being clear on what you want to achieve and where you want to go, which is usually there's a bit of work required there to tease apart what you think you want, because a lot of people might have been, putting these expectations on you or putting pressure on you throughout your career. So you might be heading in a direction, but it's basically like just a note to check. Is this what you truly want? Does it feel aligned? Does it feel good? Are you passionate about it? And you don't have to have all the answers. You're going to keep evolving throughout your career and want to make different impacts. But being clear on the purpose, where you're going, because that will impact your strategy, which will give you direction, which will give you clarity, and will help you make decisions about what makes sense. And then the authenticity piece is, again, kind of it's a nuanced topic, because I am not a proponent of be your 100% authentic self, show up in the workplace as you, and all of your beautiful colors and everything that you are, show up like that. It's beautiful. It feels good to read, the beautifully designed graphic quote on Instagram or wherever you found this message.
Right.
But it tends to gloss over a very real reality that can be gendered, that can be different depending on your intersectional identity and how you show up and different obstacles that you're up against, that it can backfire sometimes. But also beyond that, beyond gender, we all impression manage to some degree. We're in an office, in a workplace. You shouldn't be 100% authentic. I love the idea, but...
Yeah. I think this is the paradox of society. We live in society. The workplace is a microcosm of that. And as human beings, also, we're naturally conformist. I think we've gone so far in the other direction of validating difference, which is fine and necessary. And at the same time, we have to recognize the reality of being human.
Social creatures.
Social creatures. So what you're saying makes sense. Striking that balance, though, right? Still being able to protect our integrity. I'm curious how you'd suggest managing that, because you've also spoken about burnout, and it just feels like a very fine line for a woman to tread is, how do I honor my nature as a woman, and maybe that more cyclical nature and different type of energy to a man, while still recognizing, okay, this is the environment that I need to function in and I need to show up in as my best self.
Absolutely. So it depends how people react to it. Some people want a very clear framework, like, okay, give me some steps and like some, percentages. If I'm balancing something, is it 50-50? So for those people, if that's the way your mind works, I say choose 60% of your authentic identity to share at work. And the other 40% is stuff that you might be a little bit uncomfortable with, but is necessary to be effective and achieve your goals in the way you want. So you'll have to stretch a bit. You might have to be a little bit more assertive than what feels natural to you. But on the flip side, that 40% is also personal stuff just to keep you protected. You don't have to share everything. And it's exhausting to be just like put it all out there every day. Like keep some stuff that's like, this is my personal life. They don't need to know that. And so if you define who your authentic, whether it's your professional identity in general or your authentic leadership, how does she show up? How does she behave? Like, what are her interests and passions, things she advocates for, things she doesn't apologize for? Like, what does that authentic leadership look like for you? And I want to add, like, get into the next step. And this to me is the solution of what do we do? How do we deal with this? And I'm going to say the paradox mindset, because you've already brought up the paradox that we exist within. But it's also referred to as the yin-yang theory of leadership. And you mentioned honoring different pieces of who you are, honoring your identity. The paradox mindset and, for the most part, yin-yang theory of leadership are about accepting and embracing this duality that we're up against. So you often have competing or conflicting expectations on you. And this is where the double bind comes in for women who want to be seen as leaders. They're either competent or they're warm, but very tricky to be both of those things. So the paradox mindset is accepting that this is the world around you most of the time. And it's saying it doesn't have to be either or. I am not just warm, or I'm not just assertive or just competent, just strong. I can be both of those things, and there can be a harmony. And the way that impacts how you show up is that it starts going from this either or, I'm doing this or I'm doing that, and that's the end game, to a both and it gives you a little bit more creativity with solutions. But the way this sounds all very like conceptual and theoretical and abstract at the moment, the way it actually impacts how you can show up at the workplace tomorrow is that you flex and adapt with the situation into very authentic, real parts of your identity and your personality, these different qualities that you might have based on what would be effective. So there's an awareness of the situation you're in and maybe expectations that people have for how you're going to show up, an acceptance that you have to navigate a little bit of that, of the expectations, but then saying, I can be all of these things, or I can be many of these things. And it's just leaning, in this situation, you have to be a little bit louder or stronger or assertive and leaning into that piece of yourself, because I guarantee you there are situations in your life where you are stronger or decisive or more, have more of a masculine energy, air quotes again. But we aren't like, nobody just ticks all the boxes for the stereotype of what a woman looks like, right, or how she shows up. We are quite complicated people, and everything is on a spectrum here. So it's recognizing that there are these different parts of you, and that's why intersectional identity is so important as well. Not just saying if you're a woman or a man, like this is how you should be showing up, but there's a lot of different pieces of you internally, and then externally how you interact with other people. It impacts those perceptions as well. So paradox mindset, embracing the duality and saying, I am more than these tick boxes. I can be many things, and I can use that to my advantage.
Yes, I'd never heard of that concept. I really like it. Thank you. It's very powerful because it encourages both self-acceptance, which is quite healthy, right? Rather than self-judgment, and discernment. So what does this situation require of me, rather than reacting to it? From which part of myself am I appropriately responding, right? And it's interesting that you brought yin yang into it, and you did mention masculine in air quotes. And from my point of view, these are just energies. We flow between them, and we mix them and remix them. We have feminine and masculine aspects. We live in this world of duality.
It's complicated. Nothing is black and white. So let's not reduce it to that, because it makes us smaller when it could be making us so much bigger. And I'm curious what you think about women also modeling this for other women. What can we do to support women in the workplace in understanding this? Lead herself sounds like a somewhat solitary activity. Ooh, yeah.
Yes, I do appreciate that in doing so, we then become an example to others of how to lead ourselves. But do you advocate for anything in terms of the broader community in the workplace?
I'm so glad that you brought that up. Community is so important. And this is a lot. So it is internal work that you are, you're building your own self-leadership and what you want to do in your career. So it feels very like independent and isolated. Community is so important. I can't remember what the statistic is or where this is from originally, so don't write it in stone, but it's basically that women who have a strong female professional community are much more likely to reach those senior levels of leadership, because we need support. And we need those other, whether it be examples or just the interaction and the feeling seen and feeling supported, because there's a lot that you have to get through along the way. And I know networking can be a little uncomfortable, especially when you're starting out in your career or if you're very introverted. Those are my people. I used to really struggle with networking, like just wanted to hide, and had all those little goals, how many people I was going to talk to.
And yet, let me just say, you run networking events.
I run networking events now, which
this is the transformation we can all aspire to.
That's the testament to how much I've changed. It is mind-blowing.
It is mind-blowing.
I shock myself sometimes. Community is so important for all of this. You're not alone in doing it. And that's so important to recognize, because there's a lot to go through when you're trying to grow and get. One of the best pieces of advice I've ever heard for people, especially early in their careers, is to get comfortable being uncomfortable, because you have to step out of that
That's your
zone in
stretch.
order to get anywhere.
Yeah.
If you stay in there, you're stuck, and I mean, that's fine if that aligns with your goals and what you want to do. But if you've got somewhere to go and you've got a mission you're on, you've got to step outside of that.
Your
bubble.
greatest power is your greatest fear, right?
Ooh, yes.
That's where the potential lies. Because the thing we're holding ourselves back from through fear is really a huge source of potential energy,
Yeah.
I feel. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think this strain of analysis started when I started Leader Self, started working for myself, was trying to decipher between good and bad fear. Like, I think, and I'm still learning about how this shows up for me, but I feel like bad fear is more around what I think I should be doing. And it's teasing apart external expectations, where the good fear is like, that would be incredible if I could do that. That would be so cool to be on a podcast. And like the good kind of nerves where you're like, yes, I'm stepping out in the right direction from my comfort zone, versus the bad fear that makes you feel small and it makes you feel anxious, but it's probably because it's not aligned and it's something you think you should be doing.
I'd really love to get into this because it ties back into our intuition, that inner voice. I've been guilty of this, and I see it so clearly now, retrospectively, where I suppressed that reaction to a situation, and later I saw, I was so right, and I should never have gone in that direction. And I spent years in the mode of struggle in various roles, which were very satisfying to a certain extent, but I can see now they were just not aligned. I think the word alignment is the most appropriate as you've used it. And I'd love for other women to not have that experience, right? To have a shortcut. Yes. And so how do we identify those feelings? How do we learn to trust them?
I'm just wondering if you read the notes that I brought in today, because one of the key points was how to turn inwards. We're women, we tend to be quite, and this is a stereotypical term, communal, focused on others, but it's also how we're conditioned when we're growing up. And there is this shift of focusing on the self to others, because a lot of women are quite selfless, generous individuals. But in kind of side by side with that, we end up looking for external validation, whether it be in getting too many degrees that we don't need, or which is something I'm still battling. A lot of women are like, I'm just going to get another certification or a qualification. I can put it on my resume, and then, they'll see that I'm an expert, which is, it's a response to the world around us. It's a rational thing, but sometimes
this is a tangent we could easily go on. I don't want to take us away from the turning inward. We're going to remember that.
Yeah, we're doing that.
We're definitely doing that. But also as women, and for me too, I felt myself contracting in response to what you were saying about proving yourself, about constantly feeling like, I don't know if I'm expert enough yet. I don't know if I'm good enough yet. Something I've definitely learned lately is fake it till you make it is actually a real thing, and it works. And not in a deceptive way, not in a,
but it's combating something that's happening in your mind.
Yeah.
To equalize it.
Right. Yeah. It's actually just giving yourself enough of that confidence, I suppose, to go into a situation feeling like you belong there. Yes.
So imposter syndrome, self-doubt, lack of confidence, self-sabotage.
All of that.
I can do like a 3-hour seminar.
We can be our own worst enemies, right?
Yeah. Absolutely. And I was for a very long time, but I do want to say self-doubt is a rational response to irrational expectations. It is just information. It is not a personal flaw. We end up beating ourselves up or being so hard on ourselves that, and this is the most painful piece about it, we often limit our own potential. I know so many women, and there's a lot of evidence for how women underrate their own performance compared to men on a lot of different leadership competencies as well, where they are objectively as good as the men that they're, being compared against in these studies. But we tend to undervalue our strengths. We're like, oh, everybody can do that. That's fine. And we focus on where the opportunities lie in our development, and we get so caught up in those things. But it's not an objective evaluation. It's not an accurate view of everything that we're bringing to the table. And it means that we don't lean into our strengths and use them.
Right, right.
So,
and maybe community is part of the answer. Somehow we need to have that reflected back to us.
Absolutely. Right? So one of the actions, I think, so there's lots of little actions, practices you can take in the app, because this is how I've learned to go through these things, is to have a little circle of basically people in your life who can reflect back what they're seeing. So asking your friends what your strengths are, and this is something I've done, so there are friends out there who've listed out stuff, and it brought up stuff. I was like, isn't that just what everybody does in that situation? But no, they're like, no, you do this above and beyond everybody else. And knowing that is oh, I can use that. That's something that's great for leadership. I can lean into that.
I've done this as an exercise a bit like this, and had to ask 3 friends a set of questions. And of course, friends are never going to be fully objective, but it's a thing you would really trust Elisa to do. And the answers were very surprising. But anyway, continue. Let's go back to that turning inward.
So turning inwards, the relationship you have with yourself is going to be the most important thing throughout your life. And self-awareness is a key tenet of successful leadership. So nurturing that relationship over time through reflection, and checking that alignment, and digging into, we started with authenticity and purpose, but digging into where you want to go and then what values would guide you. I've had experiences where I felt out of alignment with work, and I wasn't really sure why it was happening. There was just stuff that was off, and I was ignoring it for the most part because you have to get on with it. But exploring it, I realized where 2 or 3 of my values were really in conflict with basically the environment I was in and how things were working. And that was just a light bulb moment of, that's why this is so exhausting. Because I'm fighting internally every day with these things that mean so much to me. So it's turning inward in that way. And you spoke a little bit about this, of this harsh inner critic. We spend so much time in our heads. We are, this is the longest relationship you're ever going to have. So being able to, this is the one thing, do not wait. Learn how to shift from that critic to your biggest champion.
Yes.
And that champion is not just self-compassion, which is so, so, so important, especially in the early phases. If this is something you're really struggling with, compassion comes first. But then balancing that compassion with challenge, because you're not just your best friend to go oh, just don't, take it easy. Don't do the work. You are your advocate for what you want to achieve in your life. And sometimes that needs being pushed.
Yes. Yes.
So you have to balance when you get into the compassion and you learn that you really, take that and let it resonate on a deep level for yourself, feeling compassion and love for yourself, then learn how to balance it.
And you can do both of those things at the same time as well, right?
So embrace the paradox.
Yes. I love this compassion and challenge. Another duality that can unify in the same way that all of our energies can be both paradoxical and exist at the same time. I mean, I love all of this. What you're saying is also at the core of spirituality, actually. And I love that we've come to that, because Her Way is about women who are doing it their way with spirituality in the mix as well. Because I feel like that is part of the whole person, however it is that we conceive of it. But I have come from, having none of that, firmly atheistic in orientation.
Okay.
And then just understanding the value of believing in something greater in whatever way, because then we have somewhere else to put our trust and to feel positive about life, to know that we are held. But I digress somewhat. I think I wanted to come back to this idea that compassion and challenge, particularly when we're feeling triggered by something, because I think it's too easy to be triggered and go into victim mode. These are weighted terms, so I want to be careful and say that, again, it's not a question of self-blame, but it's a question of understanding that from a spiritual point of view, life is here to teach us, that we're the students of life. And particularly when we find ourselves reacting in a heightened state, that's the moment to have that compassion, firstly, to not self-blame or self-judge that, I'm reacting in this way. Understand that that's coming from a protective place, most likely in us, which trauma patterns tend to be protective. And at the same time, not forget that challenge, that piece that I also need to learn from this. I'm not going to default to blaming the circumstances. I'm going to stay in my agency and move through this with grace. So that's just how I've learned to navigate these things in a more constructive way.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I love the point of what you're saying, but you've also worded that so beautifully. And I think for me, a couple of years ago, if you brought up spirituality, I would have been like science is my thing. Like, I don't know what you're talking about, but like, I don't have crystals.
I've been there.
But I have had quite a similar journey where I've shifted into, we don't know.
We don't know
Whether God is your guide or the stars are, or if science is your thing, or you simply don't know. The world is chaotic and your brain is doing its absolute best to protect yourself, like you're saying.
Yeah.
And get through it all, because it is this long game. So you need to think about sustainability. But there's so much negativity out there, and it can be so overwhelming and anxiety inducing and depressing at times. We all need a system to keep us sane, whatever that looks like for each of us. And I think, if I were to define a label now, I'm probably agnostic, which is just like
we don't know,
the indecisive of all.
Well, I call it the great mystery.
Whatever it is for you, it's an individual choice. But I think the important part here is that turning inwards. Because a lot of times religion is something we soak up from the world around us, which is fine in many cases, but being able to turn inwards. And I don't mean to make light of the situation or minimize it, but trying on different belief systems like outfits to see how each one makes you feel. Because there's a lot of different stuff, and you're probably going to evolve. Obviously we both have, we've changed so much. And we need to keep questioning and rethinking and relearning our understanding, not just of ourselves, but the world around us.
Right.
And how does that serve us in where we want to go and how we want to show up in the world and what we want to achieve, the impact we want to make. So it's an openness to whatever is out there, but mindfully.
Yeah. I think, and again, comes back to alignment. Because, like you said, you're allowed to explore different modalities, different practices, and we should, until we find what is supportive of us.
Yeah.
And what feels in alignment, and that might change as well. We're allowed to evolve.
Yeah.
And so again, the question comes back to, well, what does alignment feel like in the body? Yeah.
And it's something that is a lot easier to clock when you have that great relationship with yourself. Because if you have a pattern of repressing stuff that's coming up for you, it can be hard to listen to yourself. And I think, we can all try on these different practices. For me, it's meditation. I meditate daily, and that has been a game changer for me. especially in those situations, and I'm kind of circling back to something you said. I hate the phrase circling back. I can't believe I just said
Erase it. It's gone.
Delete.
Shall
I'm
we
going
say
to cycle back.
Cycle back.
I'm gonna
How
cycle
aligned
back.
are we? That
Yeah,
was what came
this
to
is
me.
we're on the same
Yes.
energy wavelength
Yeah.
at the moment.
Yeah.
Now I've got what was I going to say?
Meditation.
The situations where we come from a place of reacting, probably with a negative emotion, and being able to pause. And there's choice if we're clear on our purpose and our strategy and our direction and our values, to see what's worth fighting versus what's worth accepting, so that you can protect your energy and keep going towards what you want to do. Because there's, the subconscious reaction tends to be one, fighting how something feels unfair, or it should have been this other way, or I should have been this other way. And there's a lot of internal battle happening.
Yes.
But our leadership, our self-leadership, however you want to think about it, needs to be sustainable. We have that, the resilience, so we can protect ourselves from burnout and from feeling like we just want to opt out of a career because it's exhausting at times and it will wear you down. So how do you choose the battles that make sense for the impact that you want to have?
Right.
So that you can manage your energy, protect yourself, and don't feel like you're constantly fighting everything.
Yes. Yes. And I also meditate daily, and I think it's one of the best practices for your energy, for coming to things with your energy intact, whole, refreshed.
And it's so beneficial for checking in with yourself to see how you're doing, because if you're always go, 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 if it's just one thing and the next, and you don't sit and be still and be quiet, and then you can listen to what's coming up for you. So it's, that self-awareness and nurturing the relationship with yourself. But I use it, and belief systems in general, to make sure that my priorities make sense constantly, like every week checking where my priorities, and then every day checking where my priorities sit, so that my mental health and my well-being can be front and center all the time. Because when it's not, and when anything is off or misaligned, then I don't have the energy to show up and offer what I have to offer, or step into that potential. Or if I'm in like kind of a negative off space, I'm not showing up. And I see that so much with women in the workplace, where they give everything to their job, to their team, to the people around them, at the risk of burning out. And they keep going. But if you don't take that holiday, or you don't take a step back and say, do I really need to be, is there something I can delegate here? Is there, something I don't need to be doing so much of? You can't give everything. You can't keep doing that. You're going to burn out. And yeah.
I'm glad that we got here, because I would love for you to share your 80-20 rule, as much as we can talk about rules. But it very much relates to what you're saying of how much effort we should be putting into being perfect at our role, versus how much effort we're putting into investing in ourselves and our future.
Yeah, exactly. So there's this quote from Brene Brown that's like, I'm a recovering perfectionist and an aspiring good enoughist. And that's something I've been working on for years, because I was a perfectionist to the T in all areas of my life, and it's exhausting. Oh, and such a waste of time. Such a waste of time.
Right.
But, it's something that's so deeply ingrained. If that's something you identify with, it's so deep inside that you have to really work on it. And that's something where you have to get uncomfortable when you figure out what good enough is and stop. And so I see this, and there's two aspects coming to mind at the moment of how this applies for work. One is when women decide to apply for a job, and they're reviewing those responsibilities and the tasks and the expertise, the skills that are laid out in a job description, and they apply when they meet 100% of that job description. They're like, I can do this job. They are overqualified. You need to meet, I would say, not even, this is an 80-20, 60% of those bullet points. The rest you can learn. What are you like? Where are you going to grow?
Right.
If you can do everything to the top level. So that's one space, is dropping that bar when you're applying for a job. You don't need to be perfect. You just need to be good enough, because you probably have a little bit of a skewed perception of yourself. Right. And then the other part is, when you perfect a job, you can get a little bit stuck in it because you become so relied upon by the people around you, your manager, your team. You're doing that job so well that they don't want to promote you out of the team. Even well-intentioned managers might not be aware that this is happening, but you're so key to it. So yes, 80% of your job, master 80% of your job. That other 20% should be thinking about the next job, the skills that you want to grow into, and the bigger picture. There's so many women who just perfect their job and they're so good at it and it's amazing. But if you want to be moving on to the next thing, if this isn't the end game for you, what else could you be kind of freeing up space and being a little bit less good at? Just be okay some days. Shoot for just average.
What?
I know, right? That's such an uncomfortable thing. Just think about all these examples of absolute incompetence that you probably come about in day-to-day lives and whatever it might be.
I mean, I'm constantly astonished the world functions at all.
I mean, some people. And just think of that and just be like, you know what? I'm going to be average today. I'm just kind of showing up.
Oh, what a relief.
You need those days.
Allow yourself that.
Like, every Tuesday, just average day. Shoot for, like, on your performance appraisal at the end of the year, like, meets expectations. Don't go beyond that, because you probably are too much of the time. Shoot for the stuff that's, like, strategic. How are you making your work visible? How are you networking with senior leaders? How, like, the other stuff that women don't.
The more intangible.
Yeah. We wait to be tapped on the shoulder and said, oh, here's your gold star. You're now going to be promoted and given the salary you want. We need to work. That 20% needs to be, how do I get that?
Yeah. I love the determination.
Yeah.
I wanted to go right back to something and ask you, maybe speaking of slightly uncomfortable.
Okay. Prepared?
Yes. You said that at one point you were called difficult. And
I am difficult.
That's interesting. Yeah, I'm curious what you, as you right now, would say to past you in that situation. Knowing what you know, what would you tell her?
I think I'm not so much whether this is what I'd say, but more about this mindset that I've grown into now of experimenting with different tactics and learning from them, with a detachment on, like, oh, I messed up when a mistake, or like I've done something wrong, something backfires, because there is a very biased world out there and I showed up a little bit too strong for what people were expecting from me, and it didn't work out, as so many women come up against a double bind and then are like, what do I do? I can navigate that now, because I'm like, oh, okay, so in that situation, that didn't come off the way I wanted it to get to my end goal. Just, it's not you. I think that would be my message to myself. That tactic didn't work, try something else, but you're not the problem. It's just how you navigate that particular situation. There's also, like, a lot of other stuff I would tell myself. But that backfired, and I'm so glad it did. I ended up being made redundant, and my team got made redundant. And that's how I ended up starting Leader Self.
Well, see, and that's really what I wanted to get to, because I think that's the pivotal moment when everything might have seemed the darkest. And I've been there too. I've been in that situation of everything just feels like it's crumbling, and something that you've dedicated yourself to and feel like you've put in your best effort, and somehow that's still not being enough or being misperceived. And that's really painful. And yet it's still just redirecting you. It's telling you, no, this isn't for you. You're not aligned with it. And somebody else sees that you're not aligned. They're perceiving it in their way. That doesn't have to be, you don't have to take that on board and identify with it. But we're always going to come up against other people's perceptions.
Yeah.
And we all see the world through our own filters. And we have to have equanimity with that, which meditation helps with.
Such a good word.
Yes,
A good word.
yes.
Hold yourself through it.
Yes,
Highs and
yes.
lows. You are your own base.
And knowing that no matter what, it's always a gift and there's something on the other side of it. And to me, that's why I want to hear that story, right? That became your invitation to step into authenticity.
Yeah. I think the greatest lessons I've learned from my own leadership have come from pain and mistakes and stuff that hurt. There's a line in Jacinda Ardern, amazing example of successful female leadership that is kind and compassionate. Her book is called A Different Kind of Power, and would highly recommend that. But there's a line in it, and I was in a little bit of a dark place. This was very recently. And because you're either not enough or you're too much a lot of the time. And it's navigating the path in between. I had been too much a couple of times, meaning I was getting rejected for ads because they were dipping into political issues, because I was reporting research on women and saying we need to support women in the workplace. And obviously, very touchy topic. So nothing even controversial, but I was being signaled that I was being too much and I needed to soften my language to get around the algorithms. This has happened several times in interviews as well, depending on the context, to soften my language. And after years of making sure that I could be heard and finding my voice, hits deep. So I was in particularly a moment of just feeling sad, because it's tough to keep having the impact you want to have. And there's a line in this book from Jacinda Ardern about maybe it's okay to be sad because that keeps you focused on change. And if everything is fine and dandy all the time, you aren't thinking about the changes that you want to make. So I try to, especially working in women's leadership, I try to focus on the opportunities, because it's easy to slide into the negativity. And, feeling, like you say, feeling victim, the victim kind of state of mind about it, rather than thinking about all the opportunities that lie ahead and why it's needed and why I want to be doing it and how I can help people navigate it, and focusing on the change and the impact I can make. And then what battles do I want to fight in order to make it happen? And other times, where is it fine to... If I need to soften my language to reach the person I want to reach, that's my choice. There's a lot there, I feel like.
That was the perfect summary. Thank you so much. Really appreciate listening to you, receiving your wisdom. Thank you.
I've loved this, and the flow worked so well, and I feel like it's a very, so many important topics that could be gone into here, but thank you for...
Absolutely.
The platform and the time for my voice.
Well, trust the flow.
Always. Always. And trust yourself through it.